How's it going, folks? Welcome to the Saturday Scoreboard here on Heart of Ohio Sports. We're sitting live inside Studio Squared. Nate Mullins, the wizard, Greg Kinn on the ones and twos, keeping us live. And I got a special guest joining me, a familiar face, Zach Baker, sports editor with the Findlay Courier. How's it going?
It's great. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. It's been a while, so it's time to catch up, Zach. And it's about mid-season, and I'm sure you're in mid-season form, right? So we are through week 6. Well, almost. We got, Elmore has a game today?
Elwood has a game tonight.
Elwood, yep. So there's a couple of area schools that still have some games to play out today, but we're into week 6 and getting close to week 7. So it's about time for those playoff seedings start to kind of take shape, and you start to look at the lay of the landscape to see where things might lay out when we get to week 10 and week 11. And there's a lot going on. So I figured it's a great time to bring back the Saturday Scoreboard, and let's talk about what's going on in high school football.
Sounds great.
But we had a fun night last night. We were at the games to be at last night. There was 2 games that were really close and came down to final plays, and we were there for both of them. But Zach, where were you last night?
I was in Van Buren for the Van Buren Liberty Benton football game.
All right. So what was the result there?
You know, Liberty Benton is having one of their better years.
Okay.
They were 4-1 coming in, and Van Buren. It was 2-3, but the competition level, they've got a new coach, Ethan Purser, who was the coach at Arcadia for a number of years before this. They're kind of trying to put things back together there. Liberty Benton was just in a different league last night in a lot of respects. Van Buren can move the ball, but couldn't score. But they do have this kid, Thorla Lopez, who's really can really separate. I think he's going to be a lot of fun to watch as the season goes on. But Liberty Benton, Mason Maude threw 4 touchdown passes. I mean, he is nice. Really special. He returned a kick for a touchdown to help them beat Arlington. He can run for 100 and some yards. I mean, he really is the total package. And Liberty Benton's defense really showed up. And it was one of the things that I do. I always call it live at the BVC,
right?
And the Blanchard Valley Conference, and that's generally what I do. And so it was a quick game. But I always feel like if you can go out there, and the one thing that is that we've had, this is the best weather year I can ever remember.
Yes.
So to be out on a Friday night and be out there in the fall evening, and it's just a lot of fun, no matter what happens. But a little bit of a lopsided game, but that's okay. It was all right. Yeah. I mean, everybody played hard. Everybody. It didn't look like we had any major injuries, so a good day. Good
night for football for sure. So Liberty Benton looks like a team that they could be a serious contender when it comes time to playoff time.
Oh, yeah.
What's your thoughts on this Liberty Benton Eagles team?
I think that this team is it's pretty good. I mean, obviously that's kind of a vague way to say it, but I think that what they have with Mason Maude is just a very, very interesting player, and he can beat you so many different ways. And but what really impressed me last night was the pass rush. They were able to get 4 sacks last night against Van Buren.
Wow!
And when the defense plays well, and the defense has played well, they've gotten some wins over some perennially tough teams like Elyria Catholic. And they go into the BBC. They've beaten Arlington, which is pretty strong, and they lost 1 game, and that was to Columbus Grove. Which was a regional finalist last year, albeit not in the same division. Yeah, so
tough game to win.
So they have had a tough schedule. They've been tested, and they're going to continue to be tested. But I would expect them to be a factor in the postseason for Division 5.
All right, so there you have it, folks. Keep your eye on those Liberty Benton Eagles. Let's take a look around the area. So last night we were at 2 different locations. We were at the Mohawk and Upper Sandusky game. That's where the adrenaline stream was. Tommy, Greg, and I were over there with Austin, Eric, and Zach Blythe. Great game. I mean, just an outstanding game from start to finish. That Mohawk Warriors team, they have really went through it this year. I mean, you talk about some of the close games that they've played, and they have suffered heartbreaking losses in just about every one of them. Actually, every one of them. They put up some points against Buckeye Central, but this team has had a hard time when it comes time to get those tough stops. It's just been tough. They're a young team. They're still growing. They're still learning. And injuries have really kind of hurt them a little bit this year. Last night reared its ugly head once again. They didn't have Kane Heyman, who's been nursing an injury, and then Caleb Bish goes down with an injury mid-game, so they don't really have a whole lot of receiving options. So after those guys go down, those are your two big weapons. Braden Chester did a great job last night. He's a big-time weapon for them, but they just need other guys to kind of step up and fill those roles, and they're young. And so it's going to take a little bit of time, a little bit of maturation process for some of these guys to kind of grow into these roles. I really feel like this is a team that they're taking their lumps this year, and they're going to see the results next year. They've got a really strong JV class coming up, a really strong 9th grade class. And this is a team that they're gonna take their lumps, like I said, this year. But I think next year they're priming themselves up for a really nice run next year.
Well, and historically, over the last 2 decades, I mean, Mohawk hasn't run a couple of rough seasons together.
I know.
Usually, if they have one bad season, and yesterday, they were up. I believe 34-27 going to the fourth quarter.
It was 34-20 at one point.
Yeah.
It was 28-12 at one point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
and again, but when you have what Upper Sandusky has, which is the high flying offense of Caden Holman and what he's able to do, the dual threat quarterback and all that sort of thing. I mean, they can make. The thing about them is that they have a high flying offense and a quick strike offense.
Yeah, big play potential.
So I don't know when you play Upper Sandusky that you ever have a lead that you're entirely comfortable with. And they can score a lot of points. And I think it's for. But you also got to keep in mind too that Mohawk had, even after they took the lead, 39-34. After they took that lead, Mohawk still moved the ball very close to the Upper Sandusky red zone.
Yeah,
and still had a chance. So that game could have gone either way.
And that's a story from week 1 when they played Calvert. I mean, it's 14-12 loss, but even at the end of that game, that offense moved down the field, got into scoring range, but just kind of sputtered out at the end.
You have about 2 minutes worth of highlights from that. Do you want to go ahead and show them?
Yeah, let's go ahead and show some of those highlights from that game because it started out, like I said, the Warriors started out hot. And then it was the Caden Holman show in the second half.
Bogner looking to pass. Steps up, delivers it over the middle.
And it was just, it's been impressive to watch.
Open. Nobody there to catch him.
It was impressive to watch Caden Holman last night.
Touchdown.
I've been hearing a lot of buzz. There's a lot of chatter around this young man, obviously, because of his work on the mound.
Yeah.
He's an impressive athlete as a pitcher, as a baseball player. He brings a lot to the table, but I'd also heard that obviously the N10 Offensive Player of the Year last year. He's got some offensive ability in high school football as well. So we were excited to get over there and get a chance to see this matchup, and it didn't disappoint. It really didn't. And this young man, the poise that he has,
Caleb Bish on
the way he's able to deliver
that's good
the
enough for a
football
Mohawk first down.
under pressure.
Brought to you by
There were
UIS
multiple
Insurance
times
and
when
Investments.
Mohawk would get
Ball marked
pressure
at the
on him,
7-yard
and he
line.
would
First
step
and-
up or roll out
Warriors
to
lead by
evade the
14.
pressure,
Rams
and
threatening
give his
here
receiver
with a
just a
third
little
and
bit
goal.
extra
Ball
time
at
to
the
get
9.
open, and then
Four
just with
receiver
the
set.
flick of the
Caden
wrist,
Holman in the shotgun.
he'd drop it in a
All by
bucket.
himself.
And it happened a few times.
Takes the snap.
Well, it's a kid
Slings
that,
it into the end zone,
week
back
after
corner of the
week
end zone.
is
He's got a
putting up
man.
video game
He
numbers.
comes down with it for the
247
touchdown.
yards last night.
What a
was the
pitch and
stats that we
catch.
received at the Courier.
Caleb Francis
week
comes
after
down
week, we
for
have
a
top
huge
guns,
ram
two of the
touchdown.
top 3 players. It feels
As
like
Holman,
we have Ryan Montgomery
just
over at
once
Finley,
again
who's the
goes to the back of the
Division
end
I
zone,
prospect.
leads the
And there's some
receivers
guys
on
you feel like you can put in that top gun spot every single week. And Caden Holman's one of them. And so is Ryan Montgomery for Finley. And Aiden Harris for Pandora Gilboa. There's just certain guys who put up big games every week, and you feel like they can be chosen. So you've got to spread it out a little bit to make sure that you don't. Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of when when we would do Player of the Day at the AT, and you knew that if you needed to, you could pick the Santoro girls, every single time. Or when Jill Stein was, when she was around, you could pick her anytime. If you needed a star, you knew that John Diebler, going back way back in the day, John Diebler was going to be there every single time. And it's kind of like that with Holman right now for Upper Sandusky. You just know whatever happens, he's going to get his yards, he's going to get his throws, he's going to get his points.
And he did last night. They put up 39 against Mohawk. And, this Mohawk team has, like I said, they've taken their lumps. but they have played a tough schedule to this point. Only one team that they've played so far has a losing record. Every other team is at least 500 or better, and they played 2 undefeated teams at the beginning of the year and hung tough with them. I mean, they hung tough with Calvert the whole game. With Hopewell, they were in that game all the way up until about the midway through the third quarter when it started getting away. But this is a team that I feel like they're really, you're just seeing a glimpse of what they have.
Well, I think
and
also,
with the injuries, it really limits their potential.
when you play close games, it's very disappointing when you fall. But the reality is that you do feel like you can compete, and you're a player or two away. And that's a much better position to be in than to be a team that's losing by 3 touchdowns every week. So Mohawk knows that it can. And look at what Calvert has done.
Yeah,
you can look at what Calvert has done so far this season, and you can say, well, we were 2 points away. We were maybe a play away from winning that game. And yesterday against Upper Sandusky, which is a much bigger school than Mohawk,
right?
You go up against them and you take it to the last play of the game. You can compete with just about anybody on your schedule, and I think that allows Mohawk not just hope for the future, but hope for the next 4 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. And they have Cary this week, doesn't get any easier.
Oh, boy.
And then they have Seneca East the week after and Colonel Crawford the week after that. But then they close out the season away against Bucyrus.
And that's part of the problem of being in the N10. Is that
just a gauntlet.
You've got, in 4 weeks, you've got to face Colonel Crawford and Cary.
Yeah.
And those are 2 of the best teams in the area.
Exactly. Well, they come off a loss against Winford. They face a tough Upper Sandusky team. And then, like you said, 3 in a row against the finest of the N10, the Cary, Seneca East, Colonel Crawford. Those are always your perennials at the top. If you want to be there, you got to beat them.
And all of those guys have big time players.
Oh, absolutely.
Foose for Seneca East is a player, and they got to figure out a way to contain him.
Yeah.
And so you go.
Good luck.
And Cary's got so many weapons, and so does Colonel Crawford. And Cary's defense is so strong. What's also hard about it is that every team that you talk about, whether it's Crawford, Cary, or Seneca East, they provide a different challenge every week.
Yeah.
You have to come up with different ideas on how you're going to slow them down.
Yeah, absolutely. And, speaking of Cary, last night...
biggest game of the year for them.
Biggest game of the year for the Blue Devils. Let's talk about that briefly here as, the Colonel Crawford game is one that I think both schools circle on their schedule, obviously. That's a rivalry game for both schools. Now, Colonel Crawford took that game last year and took a 26-game winning streak away from the Blue Devils. And, going into that game, I think after Cary had beaten them the last 2 years and then they beat them at home, they were thinking, I think a lot of fans were thinking, all right, the Blue Devils got this one in the bag. The Eagles came out and they really showed them that Colonel Crawford came to play. And, that was a tough game for Cary last year to lose. We were there. We had the extreme the extreme there. But this Cary Blue Devils team, Jonathan Mershman's always going to have them in contention for something. They're always going to be right there. And then when they started out 0-2, everybody kind of went, Cary 0-2? What? How does that happen? And then they reel off 4 straight. They beat Lima Central. They beat Winford. And now they get this huge win against Colonel Crawford. But the way it happened, the defensive performance, 27-7 over a tough Colonel Crawford team who's put up some points this year. They put up 53 or 57. They put up 49. They had 29. They hung 29 on Seneca East last week. They put 56 on Bucyrus. This is a team that can put up points. And that Cary team, aside from the 1 touchdown, they stood up tall.
Well, I think also that game was the score was one thing, and we had a writer there, Riley Dickinson, was there for us, and in his story, he was saying that the game was a lot closer than maybe the final score would indicate. Cary didn't get its first score until about halfway through the second quarter.
Yeah. So
it was a very, very close game. And the thing about Cary is they are so tough when they play from ahead because they make as a defensive team, they make it so hard on you. And we saw this during their playoff run to the state championship in 2021. They make it so hard on you, and you have to work so hard to get points off of them. And Hopewell Loudon was really the one team, when you look at it, that really, really, and I guess Galleon as well, but they were able to really put some points up. Hopewell Loudon was. Nobody else has done anything close to what Hopewell Loudon did.
Right.
And they make it so hard on your defense. And they, a lot of these guys, a lot of these teams go both ways. you're tiring them out both ways.
Yeah.
And I think that's what happens with Carey.
Oh, hey, we got a monitor. That's nice. That'd be definitely useful. So we can actually watch what's going on here. That's all right. I think I charged it last night before the game, so we should be good.
So yeah, but
So now we can at least watch our highlights as they play on the screen.
yeah, but I think that if you look at what Carey has done defensively, I think that's what really stands out. And they have a way of just wearing out teams on both sides of the ball and frustrating teams on both sides of the ball. And I think that's what happened on Friday night.
And that's kind of the thank you, by the way, Greg. That's kind of the thing with this and a lot of powerful, like powerhouse teams that depend on the run game. Carey's a run dominant team. They always have been. They're not going to throw the ball a whole lot unless they have to. And that, like you said, if you give a team like that the lead, it's that much harder to play catch up because then they're just going to, that ball control offense is going to take control of the game. And then they start taking control of the clock. And then the defense puts the clamps down. It just makes it that much harder for a team to try to come back.
Right.
7-0's one thing, but when you start getting up 14-0 and then the 27-7 score at the end, I mean, if a team like that gets up by 14 on you, it's like you really feel like you're up against it. You know, it just becomes a tall task to try to come up with a comeback against a team like that. But Carey has Mohawk, Bucyrus, Upper Sandusky, and Seneca East to close out the season. A chance to possibly finish on. I mean, nothing to. Mohawk's going to give them a tough game. They always do. Seneca East always plays Carey tough. Upper's a tough team. You don't want to overlook any of these teams. But from a media perspective, we look at this and we say Carey has a good shot of going on an 8-game winning streak going into the playoffs.
Well, and again, they've played a tough schedule even outside of the N10. So they could go in with a lot of momentum and be very battle tested by the time they get to the postseason. And, you know, the whole thing is you want to put yourself in the best position. You want to peak at the right time. And it looks like after that performance in Week 6 yesterday, it looks like Carey's about to peak at the right time.
Absolutely. All right, so the Blue Devils, once again, moved to 4-2 on the season. Colonel Crawford suffers their first loss on the year. Let's talk about this Seneca East squad picking up a win over Buckeye Central. 42-14 win. Moves the Tigers to 3-3 on the season now. They've won 2 out of their last 3. They face Bucyrus coming up. Then they have Mohawk, Winford, and Carey to close out the season. And we know Ed Phillips is always going to have this team tough, tested, ready for this stretch run at the end of the year. And this is a team that's, I think they've going on consecutive postseason berths now. I think they've got a few going now. I don't want to say an exact number. I think it's like 7 or 8 consecutive postseasons, but I might be wrong on that. Either way, this is a team that's a perennial. They're always there. They're always in the conversation. At 3-3 with this record in front, with this schedule in front of them, what are your thoughts on this Seneca East team? Obviously, Blake Foose he's an incredible talent, and he can carry this team on his back at times. But they're going to need other guys to step up if they're going to be successful down the stretch.
I think that they've shown that they can put up a lot of points. They've shown they can compete against some tough teams. I think again the problem that they have that Seneca East has is again that N10 is so tough and it's so top heavy, and they're going to be. It comes down to sometimes in the N10 too. It's who you play. I mean, there are teams that you think that Seneca East won't have a problem with in the N10. Buckeye Central was one of them, but you still when you have teams like when you have teams that you have to play every year that are Carey and Colonel Crawford and now Upper Sandusky and Winford and teams like that, it really is kind of a gauntlet, and they've kind of felt that a little bit. I think this year. Now,
Tommy uses the term meat grinder.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty accurate. And I think if you look at the teams that are in on Seneca East schedule, you are gonna get tested a lot of times, and we know that they're going to be mentally ready. We know that they're going to be as ready for a game as you can be. It's just it's tough now with the expanded playoffs and all those sorts of things. You feel pretty good about an Ed Phillips team going into the playoffs. They've been on some big playoff runs, so you never count them out. It's just that when you look at the conference they play in, the schedule that they play, it's going to be tough. I think Tommy's absolutely right. It's a meat grinder schedule, and every team in the N10 feels that a little bit.
Yeah. So, like I said, they have Bucyrus coming up next, and then they have Mohawk. We'll be there with the X Stream for that one. That one's at Mohawk. So that one is going to be a tough game for Seneca East to try to win, especially with this Mohawk Warrior squad. You got to feel like they're going to have a chip on their shoulder these last 4 games. They're going to want to come out and try to prove that they are not what their record says they are.
And I think, and if they can prove it, it's not impossible that that you can make a playoff run at that point.
Oh yeah,
because of the fact that they've still got 4 weeks. They got a lot to play for. With this point, it's not unheard of that a 4-6 will get you in.
Yeah,
5-5 will get you in. So they've still got a lot to play for. They've still got a lot in front of them. And again, Mohawk, like Seneca East, can look at what they've done through the first 6 weeks and say, we can really compete with the top teams in this conference and on our schedule.
And when you look at the N10 right now, Cary is the belle of the ball with the 3-0 record in league play. But you got 4 teams right there in the mix at 2-1. Colonel Crawford, Seneca East, Upper Sandusky, Winford. If Cary were to suffer a loss to any of those, obviously they can't lose to Colonel Crawford, but if they lose to Seneca East, or if they were to lose in any of these upcoming games, that kind of opens the door for one of these other teams to come up and maybe make their statement, make their case for N10 champion. It's an open league, but I think right now Cary controls their destination.
So far, Cary, with the win last night, Cary certainly solidified itself as the favorite in the conference.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's the N10. We're going to move on now. Let's talk a little bit of SBC River football. And, I had a conversation with Coach Lento a couple weeks ago on the Coach's Corner, and he's really excited about this squad. And they did suffer a couple of tough losses to a couple of undefeated teams with Calvert and Hopewell Loudon, but they righted the ship this week with a big win over Willard on homecoming night. When you talk about a 4-1 Willard team coming into town, into Lakota, and Mike Lento had these guys not only ready to play, but ready to shut down a high-powered Willard offense. Just 7 points for Willard. I mean, you talk about this team. This Willard team has put up points in bunches this year. They haven't scored less than 20 points all year, and Lakota holds them to 7 points last night. I want to see if I can get on the horn with Coach Mike Lento here, as he is just kind of hanging out with all of his coaches doing a little film study here. But let's see if we can get Coach Lento on the line, because I want to talk. I want to figure out what's going on here with Coach Lento and this Lakota Raiders program. Greg, do we have a speaker? You can feed me some audio. Just make sure the speaker's on, because I haven't been hearing myself out here. I want to make sure I hear Coach.
Hello.
Yeah, I don't hear Coach very well.
No, you got me?
I think I hear it in there, but I don't hear it out here. The speaker out here is not on.
I'm talking.
That sounded a little bit better.
You guys on a commercial
There
break?
we go. There we go. There's Coach Lento. How we doing, Coach? No, we're not on a commercial. We are live. Before you say
man.
anything, I'll let you know that. Kind of set the table a little bit,
Okay.
How we doing, Coach?
We're doing good. I'm actually charting some plays right now.
Charting some plays. All right. So we talked a little N10 football, but now we're into SBC River play. And, man, we talk about your game first, because what a ball game. What a statement win for you guys on homecoming night. I mean, you got one of your senior leaders out changing tires in the parking lot in the morning, and then he comes out and has an MVP caliber performance last night. Just talk about what that means to the team to pick up such a huge win over Willard.
No, let's go back and be honest. He's kind of going back to the Coach Prime stuff that he's been saying all week, and we kind of brought that in with our team. You got guys that made plays last year, and we got guys that we think can play football all over the place, and they're not getting touches. They're getting touches. We even look at Micah Williams last week, and we're kind of doing some stuff running wise, and love what both Coach Rogers did offensively and defensively. But Micah's, he's got to want the ball more. So you ran the ball 9 yards last week. So if you want the ball, prove us that you want the ball. Same thing with Chase, Nate, and all these guys. Listen, fix your play.
Yeah.
Because we're putting you guys in the right situation to be successful. You just got to answer the bell. Now, that sounds a little bit strong and languaging and all that stuff, but that in reality, that's what we did this week with our kids. And we focused on us. And great game plan. Started off better this week than we've done the last 2 weeks, so that's always nice. And got a little momentum, and we were able to really control the game.
And so I want to talk about some of the performances last night by some of your guys. Obviously, we talked a little bit about Chase Dussel. Big-time performance for him. I think he had 9 catches going into that game all year, but he has 5 last night and goes over a buck for receiving yards. Talk about this young man, the senior leadership he provides for this team.
Oh, we got a lot of leadership all over the place. You got Chase Dussel, you've got C.J. Biddle. I know we've got Gabe Gallagher a little bit. You got Isaac King up front, but Chase came out and he answered the bell. That's what he did. I had 2 early scores for us. Jalen Wagner stepped in there and threw a great ball. So you saw him. He's mentioned our kids come in every Friday, and they welcome kids into the school. And we heard a tire pop, and it was letting air out, and he was the first one over to that car. His family's into sprint car racing, so changing that car was light work for him.
So it was just a pit stop. That's all it was.
It was a pit stop, and but in all reality, I told the kids that morning. We have a leadership breakfast on Friday mornings, and we talk about winning the day and winning the morning. And I said, you guys started winning yesterday morning.
Yeah,
that carries over. So a great performance. And again, patience is key, especially when you have athletes all over the place, especially when you have our schedule that we had. Calvert and Hopewell are as good as what everybody's seeing them, and as they're good what they are on paper. They're making that happen, and we had them our first 2 league games, and they're probably the 2 top. They're not probably, they are the 2 top best teams in the league, and so our kids just are on in there playing well and played well last night, but we're on to Gibsonburg this week.
That's right. That's coach talk right there. We're on to Gibsonburg, right? So I do want to, before I turn it over to Zach, he's got some questions, obviously, but I want to just ask about this defense, all right? You guys have been up against it this year, but for you to shut down this Willard offense, I mean, they put up at least 20 points in every game they played this year, and you guys shut them down to just 7 last night. Now, they kind of had some, shot themselves in the foot moments with some penalties, some turnovers and stuff. But you guys had to think maybe you caused some of that to happen, maybe getting in their heads a little bit, getting out to that big lead early, had them kind of pressing a little bit. Talk about what went into your defensive game plan for that game. Uh-oh.
It sounded like we might have lost him a second while you were talking. I don't see any movement here.
Hang on. I still have them on the phone, but the Bluetooth came disconnected. I don't know what the heck happened. There we go. Now, Coach, you still there? I got him over here.
I'm not getting any levels from the Bluetooth.
It says it's connected.
And it was such a good question, too.
Yeah. It's just like,
yeah.
all right, well.
Hang up, check on back.
I just disconnected and reconnected. Hopefully that'll work, but no, nothing still. He was kind of in and out on his call a little bit. So let's try to reconnect here. See if maybe he was in a bad reception spot. Maybe he had some bad reception. Coach, you still there? Yeah, I got him on my speaker. I don't know why it's not coming through on the Bluetooth. It was working fine. Either way, we'll try to catch up with Coach Lento sometime in the week. I wanted to have you have the option to ask him some questions too, but
Well, I think
I can hear you, Coach, but we're only on speakerphone here, so I mean I can kind of do a little speaker on the mic here thing maybe, but
Whatever. Hey, listen. This is part of.
yeah, because it's on my mic.
This is what we're going to do with our. It's trial by error, troubleshoot. We're going to get our class involved with this, with your program here, and This is stuff we got to work out.
That's absolutely right. Well, we have it worked out now. I got you on here. I got you mic'd up. So, once again, let's talk about that defensive performance because, for real, to me, that was the highlight of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, Coach Dave Rozier, and I'm not saying this because he's sitting next to me right now, but he did a great job getting our kids ready to go. He does put probably more time than anybody on our staff getting things ready to rock and roll. And we felt like our athletes could match up with their athletes, keep everything in front of us. We changed up our defensive scheme a little bit, but we had 4 freshmen on the field. When you have 4 freshmen on the field defensively, what you got to do is you got to do your job.
That's right.
I mean, that's not good. You have to do your job. You can't do anything outside of it. You got to do your 111 and just do that. And if you can do that, and you got trust around you that your other 10 guys around you are going to do their job, positive things happen. And that's exactly what happened last night. I mean, we were able to put pressure on Robinson. Our D-line did a great job keeping everything inside of them, so we didn't let him scramble outside the pocket. The only time he really ran is when it was a designed run. And so we saw him. He was able to kind of get out on some teams and scramble a little bit, but so we kept him inside of us. Our big guys got their hands up and, overthrew the ball a little bit, kind of put them under some pressure, and we were able to get 3 picks. We thought we could have gotten, at least 3 more, but they were called for maybe ticky-tack pass interference or something like that. But very, very proud of our kids and the way they stepped up defensively for us and a high-powered offense that we went against yesterday.
And the last thing I want to talk about, now I'm going to turn it over to Zach, and he's got a couple questions. Michael Williams, let's talk about his performance last night. Big-time performance, 186 yards on 22 carries. He had, 137 in the second half? So
yeah, I think he was. Yeah, I think he was just 200 going in, 222 going in, and like I said, we challenged our guys. We challenged them. But you got to play better. You want the ball. You want your name called. You've got to show us that you want to step up to the plate. Now, first and foremost, that starts with our line up front, and we grinded on our line guys up front. We know we're not bigger than anybody else, but we need to be physical. We didn't play physical the last 2 weeks. Last night we played physical. I think Willard wanted to off the field and on their bus as soon as they could get out of here with as physical as what we played. And then Mike Williams finished it. He ran the ball hard. He stuck his foot in the ground, and he was a freight train running it, and there's no doubt about it. But he looked like the Mike Williams Michael Williams that ran last year, and not like the last 2 weeks. So we're very, very impressed with what we saw. But it goes up front too with our guys that block for him.
Absolutely. All right, Zach.
Hey, Coach. I think everybody kind of figured that you guys, could beat Willard. Did it surprise you at all? The final outcome, the score differential, the fact that you guys really were able to win in a rout. Hold
on. I'm gonna stop you there because I'm gonna talk like I started talking with Josh Morgan yesterday. Are you sure? Because we got voted against in a lot of papers. So do people really think we could beat Willard? Because we got voted out. No, what we did is I'm just kidding. Our coaches, we felt like if we played well and we came out and executed, that the outcome could turn out the way it did. We thought maybe it would be a little bit more of a shootout with them scoring a little bit more points, but when our defense stepped up and played the way it did, we were very pleased with what we saw, just very, very proud of our guys. And it was for our guys to come out and prove it to themselves that they knew they can get it done. We knew as coaches all along that we still got a long season ahead of us. So we're still not done yet, but playing the way they did last night is the way that we knew that they could play all along. It just kind of got away from us to let against Calvert and Hopewell.
Coach, you go through a 10-week regular season and everything that comes after that, but kind of the thing you talk about is the kids' attitude and the kids how they approach everything. How is it you go through the ups and downs of a season? How have you been able to kind of maintain, and how has the coaching staff been able to maintain making sure that everybody stays on the same page, that they don't try to do too much, because that can happen, especially when there are some struggles, when there are some downs in a season. How have you been able to kind of keep everybody together and just keep the attitudes where you want them?
You got to. You're optimistic, right? But also at the same time is kids are great at knowing and seeing. We'll see it. Kids are all right. So kids are great in knowing that and seeing if you're kind of telling half truths or things of that nature, right? And so we're very real with our kids up front. And so we told them that everything's on the table is in front of us. We know we wanted to try and and work to finish in the top 3 in the league, and we knew we wanted to play for week 11. And so with the ups and downs, everything's still in front of us. Even with the 2 losses coming into this game last night, everything was still in front of us. And so we go back, we revisit, we set it up, and we make sure we rock and roll. And so it's as simple as that. Our goals are still on the table. And so when your goals are still on the table, it's easy to come to practice every week. And, nobody likes to lose. Nobody likes to lose 2 straight. And, a long season ahead of us. But you got to be real with the kids, because the kids will call us out as adults sometimes. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I know you're a former Tiffin Dragon. Now they've got Ashland today. How you feeling about that game?
I'll tell you what, man. It's meaningful football all around. I didn't get the chance to beat Ashland, and Coach Research's done a great job getting those guys ready. Us alumni are very, very excited, and go Dragons, baby.
All right, Coach. Well, hey, that's all I got for you today. We will be there this Friday. We'll have the X-Stream over there for the Gibsonburg game. Just make sure you're nice to my guys.
Always, we try to be.
I appreciate the time. Thank you, Coach.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
All right, that was Coach Mike Lento of the Lakota Raiders joining us on the program. Big win for Lakota last night over Willard, 36-7. They face Gibsonburg this Friday, which you can find that right here on Heart of Ohio Sports on the X Stream this week, as we have a double header at Frost Callenhouse Stadium this Friday that will be covering both games. Can you believe that? Isn't that weird, Zach?
That's weird.
Yes. So Columbian plays Clyde at 4:30, and Calvert plays Margaretta at 8 o'clock.
Wow, that's weird.
It's the first you're hearing of this?
Well,
It is just weird. But
I don't ever. Okay, I worked as some of you may know. I worked in Tiffin for the better part of 14 years.
Mm-hmm. Really?
In that time, we did have double headers at Frost Callenhouse. You would have, and some, you would have,
boys and girls soccer.
Well, yeah, you'd have that, but you'd also have you'd have back when Heidelberg played at Frost Callenhouse or Tiffin University, and then you'd have Calvert at night. Mm-hmm. But I have no recollection of a double header on a Friday.
Yeah,
and the other part of it is that you've got to hope that the weather cooperates, because if a game at 4:30, that means you're going to be getting a lot more of the daylight, a lot more of the heat. And you got to make sure that you get everybody in and out. You make sure that you avoid the cramping and all that kind of stuff that comes into it as well. You got a game plan. I mean, I remember back when they switched games from 7:30 to 7, there were some coaches who were against it because they said, that exposes my kids to an extra half hour of heat and the effect that can have on kids.
Okay.
So you can imagine what 4:30 will do.
Yeah.
Hey, college kids play afternoon games on Saturday all the time, but we're talking about high school kids. It's a little different, and it's just something you got to keep in mind. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, that's actually something that I didn't even think about, but it is something to consider for sure. Because that Columbian game is going to be played entirely in the sun. Yeah, like the whole game is going to be in the sunlight. So you're going to have to stay well hydrated for that one for sure. And it looks like, if I remember correctly, I always try to look ahead at the weather forecast on Friday. I'll look at the next Friday's forecast to see if there's anything around that. Looks like it's going to be sunny, if I can remember correctly. So it is...
it could be a lot. That's good.
It could be a lot hotter.
It could be a lot worse. Yeah.
Yeah.
You also hope that there's not much humidity, and I mean, even last night, which was a perfect game, they still had to take, in Van Buren, the weather was pretty much perfect, but you still had to have pauses then. Yeah. And that was at night to make sure that the kids got hydrated and, got their breaks.
Well, I know from talking to Ben Bogner's dad, I was texting with him a little bit last night and this morning, and he said Ben was having cramping issues last night. Yeah. And that's just a common hydration thing. But, I mean, I think a lot of times when athletes... they're walking around, it's not hot. You're not sweating during the day, so you're not thinking it's that hot. So you think, I'm fine. I don't need to hydrate that much. I don't need to overhydrate. But I always say, if you're cramping in a game, you can't catch up. Like, you're already dehydrated, and there's no amount of water or Gatorade that you can drink that'll get rid of those cramps. It's just gonna you have to play through it.
Yeah.
That's why prehydration Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is so important. Trying to get as much hydration as you can in before those games. But yeah, that doubleheader is going to be different. It's going to be a different environment because think about it. I mean, as soon as that Columbian game's over, those fans have got to leave, and then you're going to have Calvert fans streaming in on the home side and Margaretta fans streaming in on the visiting
and that's
side.
the other part of it too. When you're playing Clyde and Margaretta, you're going to get probably good road crowds as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially from Clyde.
Yeah.
I mean, it's only a 20-minute drive, so you're going to get a lot of fans for that first game, and that's interesting. And I am kind of fascinated. You know, when you're playing at 4:30, the crowd becomes a little bit of a factor too. You know, because it's not the same thing. A Friday night, everybody's off work, they're off school. It's a little different, you know. On a Friday, okay, we're gonna head out in the afternoon. You know, you might get a smaller crowd.
Well, I'm going to have both Coach Lutz and Coach Reeser on the Coach's Corner this Tuesday at Benchwarmers. Make sure you tune in for that one. That was going to be a great episode. I'm going to have to kind of pick their brain on how they're going to prepare for this differently because, I mean, Coach Lutz is going to have to prepare his guys for, like you said, a game that's all in the sun, but also a game that's way earlier than what they're used to. I mean, some of these kids are going to have to get out of school early. I would imagine everybody that's on a football team is going to need to leave school early so you can get ready and get prepared, get warmed up before the game starts.
Not just the players, but everybody.
Administration.
Well, and
anybody who's a teacher and a coach,
assistant coaches. You know, they got to make sure that they're, and of course you got the band and the cheerleaders and all that stuff as well. So it's a full program thing.
There's a lot that goes into it.
And on top of that, it's a big rivalry game for both of these schools.
A huge rivalry game. And speaking of rivalry, you talk about this Columbian team. Last night,
run big man.
They went into a game with Sandusky, and before the Extreme left, I had the feeling, I don't know what it was, but I said, I just feel like you guys are going to have a good game tonight. I feel like this is going to be a lot closer than what people think, because Sandusky had played a pretty decent schedule to that point. I mean, they came in at 3-2, but their two losses were to Fremont Ross, who's a Division II team, and Clay, who is a Division II team. And they only lost to Clay by 1, and they lost to Ross by 6. I mean, they beat a Division I team, Lorraine, who's 5-1 now. And that was a pretty handily won game in their Week 3 victory. So they had come into that game, and the win over Padua Franciscan, the win over Vermilion, big win. You know, they had some momentum coming in, and I just felt like this isn't a team you want to overlook. Sandusky is starting to build that program back up to where they were. Now, Perkins is always going to steal talent from them. And Sandusky St. Mary also is a little bit of that as well. But Sandusky has always been one of those schools where I feel like that's like a sleeping giant. Like Fremont Ross, a sleeping giant kind of team. Any year they can be good just based on the talent pool that they have to draw from over there.
Yeah.
So with this Sandusky team, I kind of thought that was going to be a close game last night. Columbian picks up a big win, but a lot
for the Blue
of,
Streaks.
I wouldn't say controversy, but
Henlon
just
looking to pass.
A lot of
and it's intercepted.
Craziness that happened last
Intercepted
night.
by
game.
Tiffin.
Zach, you guys had a reporter over there, right? Matt Nye was over there?
Well, actually, it was a Billy.
It's going to be a fake.
Billy Hayen from
Billy Hayen. Okay.
Sandusky was there, and I got a chance to read his story, and it sounded like
you can't just assume
it was a one in a million play that might have helped Columbian get away with that win. But it's the sort of thing that you talk about. You talk about. I think are we seeing it right now?
That's the punt that went straight up in the air, and went backwards. And a big man picks it up for Tiffin Columbian and takes off and runs with it. Now, we didn't get the end of that play because he only saved the beginning part.
But he ran 20 yards and extended a drive for Columbian. And of course, Rogo. I always thought they'd be great golfers. I didn't know that. I didn't know that family would be as good at the other sports as they are. And I'm sure Darby would say, "Well, I was good at other sports." Right. I'm sure he was. I'm not saying he wasn't, but I always think of golf for obvious reasons. But Columbian's got a lot of skill players who can make things very, very difficult on the defense. But at the same time, I'll tell you what, there are few things that can turn a game like a big special teams play.
Yeah.
And this is not a conventional special teams play.
Oh no, not by any means.
Something like this, when a defense feels like they've gotten you off the field and then they got to go back out. That's a big thing.
Yeah.
And I once years and years ago, back when Dave Walkowski was still coaching at Tiffin, they played a game at Findlay, and they lost the game because of the special teams. It was like everything was even, but Findlay had it just a little bit better on the special teams. And the Findlay coach, whose name escapes me at the moment, it's a couple coaches ago, but he said, they're hidden yards. They're hidden yards. If you look at the stats from that game, you're not going to see that play on the in the main stats. But it was a play that helped decide the game. And I'll tell you, every week, and it's becoming very, very apparent. I talked about it earlier with Liberty Benton's game against Arlington, the kick return a few weeks ago. Special teams can win and lose games. Special teams can decide how your season is going to go. And sometimes just being in the right place at the right time and having the presence of mind to pick up, that's not something. And even Judd joked about it afterwards. He says, just like we drew it up, you don't call that play, you don't make that play, but your offensive lineman decides, hey, I'm going to pick this ball up and run with it. Something like that, just having the presence of mind to do that can make a big difference in a game.
Oh, you're absolutely right, 100%. And that's, I think, what you saw last night. That was kind of one of those backbreaker kind of plays. I mean, it was a tie game when it happened, and then Columbian goes on to score then what would be the game-winning touchdown just a few plays later. So it's just one of those things where the way that game ended, though, yeah, I wasn't there, so I didn't get to see it. But there's two things that you can say. One, whoever the scoreboard operator is probably not going to run scoreboard for Sandusky anymore. I don't know. Maybe that's just me assuming. I hate to say that. I hate to place blame on anyone, but that took a long time for them to change from third to fourth down on the scoreboard. Now, there was a 10-second period between the time that the play ended to the time they got up to spike the ball. It doesn't take 10 seconds to change a scoreboard from third to fourth down, but there are two sides to every coin. And for that, I will say, you got to have situational awareness as a quarterback. You got to know what the down is.
Well, I think the other part of it is, too, you don't want to put too much blame onto. I remember one time I was at a game, and the guy who was running the scoreboard didn't start the clock right away. And the coaches who were, this will tell you where it was in Frostcal now, because the coaches were all behind the glass, and they're like banging on the window trying to get the scoreboard operator. And he turns around and he says, I can't do it until the referee tells me that I can.
Yes.
And so the scoreboard operator, they're not running anything specifically.
Right.
They are simply translating the information that they get. And so I don't want to say I don't know what happened here.
No, you're right.
But you don't want to put too much criticism on one person, because it's not their job to run the game.
You're absolutely
right. The game is run by the people on the field.
Yep.
I'm showing that actual run now from the lineman there.
No, my iPad just decided to die at just the perfect moment.
Yeah, I pulled up on the YouTube here. It was showing the actual plays. I'm thinking that since the highlight didn't have the end of the clip in it.
But yeah.
I think one of the things is that, and then the other part of that is, I remember as a reporter, if you see something that's wrong, you can't tell them either, because that's not your job is to report. It's the same,
report on the
same
game
kind of thing. The reporter can't yell at the referee or hey, that's wrong. That's not our job.
You just report on what happens.
Yeah, it's the same thing. So, when something like that happens, I think, and again, when you're in a coach, when it's so tough, because there's a lot going through your head, but you really need to know. You talk about situational awareness, and it's really up to the people on the field, whether it's coaches, players. That's how that game is dictated, and the officials, of course, as well. But that has to be dictated.
When you go back and look at the replay of it, and you can find it on the X Stream, Heart of Ohio Sports, search it on YouTube. When he comes up to the line, before that, you see the coaches on the Sandusky sideline screaming at him, "Get up to the line! Get up to the line!" And I think they're telling him next play, but I think he thinks they're telling him get up to the line, spike it, and it's a heartbreaking way to lose a football game.
You know what? You remember during the 2020 season when Tom Brady did that?
Yeah.
And remember this? Tom Brady going like this? I mean, look, so it happens.
It happens to the best player in the game.
You can't be too hard on high school kids or high school coaches when NFL players can't get that right. I've seen players spike the ball on 4th down in an NFL game.
Yep.
I've seen players take a sneak on 4th and 1 when the clock was running and the clock ran out. It's a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
And so, the ending was something, but again, you got to remember in the heat of the moment, things get a little bit, things get a little crazy sometimes, and don't be too hard on these guys because they're doing the best they can.
That's the thing. Don't be too hard on these guys.
And there's no doubt about it because you can see on our scoreboard that it does say 3rd down on the scoreboard. Like you said,
we have a camera that's on the scoreboard.
You have to know as a quarterback and stuff. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, how can you blame the guy?
And the scoreboard is not official.
No.
That's the other thing you got to keep in mind.
But I'm just saying, because we use the scoreboard for our scoreboard, you can clearly see that they didn't have it marked right.
It's easy to fall into that trap too of looking to things that you're going to see, but. Scoreboards, things can be wrong, and that's why it's so important, and it's difficult. And again, close games, a lot of times close games are hard if you haven't played in a lot of them. I haven't had a chance to look at Sandusky's scores.
They shot that scoreboard off before they even done shaking hands.
Ooh. Well, I do know from experience
nobody wants
as
you
a
to-
sportscaster, as soon as I write down the final score before the double zeros are on the
I do too.
scoreboard.
No, and that's true because the scoreboard. And that's the other part of it. Especially basketball games are more.
They'll shut it off before.
Football usually lets it roll, but basketball games you have to write it down because within about 30 seconds you can look up and it'll be gone.
Yeah,
and so there are things like that. I'm just saying, it was a really exciting game, and it looked like the coach for Sandusky, reading his quotes, he said, look, we can learn from this. We did a lot of good things, and the ending will stick with people. It will, because that's just how it is. Mm-hmm. But there were just a lot, but again, a lot of things in a game, a lot of plays in a football game, and it's I think for Columbian, and I always say this. You never have to feel bad about a road conference win.
That's where my next point was going to go. It's like, I think a lot of emphasis is being placed on the scoreboard and the miscue at the end of the game, and they're almost trying to take credit away from Columbian for winning that game. It's like they want us to talk about, or who am I saying they? We're part of the media. We want to talk about the controversial plays.
Talk about the controversy at the end.
We always want to talk about that, but I don't want to take anything away from the fact that was a tough road win for this Tiffin Columbian team, and they have a tough stretch of games coming up next where they're going to have to face some very tough teams at home. So, you got Clyde, Bellevue, and Perkins all coming to Frost County Stadium over the next 4 weeks. So, to be able to pick up that win on the road is huge for this team. And the way that they did it, coming back from being down, you get those 21 unanswered points in the midpoint of that game, that's what we should be talking about. This team has a lot of resolve. And, a lot of people watched that Bishop Watterson game and got frustrated, but this is a Bishop Watterson team that's 6-0 now and vying for one of the top spots in the Division III.
And Sandusky's a rival, and they've been a rival for Columbian dating all the way back to when Sandusky entered the NOL more than a decade ago.
And that familiarity has a tendency to kind of lead to these closer matchups.
Look at the success that Columbian has had in recent years.
Yeah.
When you are a top team, you're going to get everybody's best effort every week, and that's just how it's going to be. And I don't. Yeah, I mean, I think when you get into these games, and especially with a team that's hungry and improving, you're going to have games that are going to be decided on things, on like one single thing, or it may seem like that one single play takes center stage. But there are a lot of plays in a football game.
Yeah, that's a great point. But one thing I do want to talk about before we move on, and I think this is pretty much going to be the last thing. We'll talk about the Hopewell Margaretta game, and then we'll wrap things up. Calvert, by the way, canceled game. St. Joe had to cancel the game due to an illness. We don't really have to break that one down, but they do have a game against Margaretta coming up next week, so a little bit of a bye before that. But this Columbian defense, I want to talk about this because this has been a consistent theme throughout this season. If this team's going to be successful in postseason play, they're going to need that defense to step up. And, there's some guys that are they're key contributors for the offense, and they're playing both ways. And that's nothing. I mean, you have to put your best players in the best position for the team to succeed. But sometimes I feel like, this team, gets down early and they have to play catch up, and that has to, it leads to them exerting a lot of energy trying to catch up in these games because they were down against Sandusky early. They were down against River Valley. They were down against Chardon. They were even down against Fremont Ross. These are games that, and they were down against Bishop Watterson. The only game they've really led the entire time was Huron. This is a great offensive team with big play potential, and they can score from anywhere on the field. This defense is going to be really put to task these next 4 weeks. What do they need to do to shore this up, Zach? Because this is something that obviously
maybe make their drives longer.
Yeah.
Look.
I just feel like maybe the offense is such a quick strike, big play potential offense that if they go 3 and out, the defense comes right back out. And
you got guys playing both ways too. So it's
that's what was my point.
Yeah,
like some of these guys are just naturally they're tired.
It's tough. I remember one time I was watching an old Browns game, and Bob Trumpy said it takes more effort to play defense than to play offense. It's easier to act than to react.
Oh, for sure.
And so when you are going through these, and then when you get the big plays, some of these guys, it's like, oh, I just ran for a touchdown pass. Now I got to go play, corner. It's not an easy transition. But I think that it's one of the downsides when you have a quick strike offense. You tend to play a lot of shootouts.
Yeah.
Because again, you got guys going both ways. But even if you don't, the defense. I remember. I mean, in yesterday's Findlay game. One of their linebackers kind of said, joking, "Oh, we got to go out." We just sat down. It's like that was in the Findlay game. Findlay, destroyed Springfield last night. But when they have Ryan Montgomery, who threw for 4 touchdown passes, but they were scoring so quickly that the defense is like, "Oh, again," So it is part of football. It's a double-edged sword. You like to give your defense a little bit of a break some of the time, and you like to give them a break, but a lot of times in smaller, in smaller high school football, even at the highest level of high school football, you don't always have that option. These guys are going to play a lot, and they're going to be tired out. Also, you got to give credit to the offenses for the opposing teams because they've been game planning all week too.
For sure,
I think and the other thing that might help. You were talking about cramps earlier. You get into things will get a little bit cooler. Maybe you won't have the same. You'll have a little bit more endurance because the weather will be a little more cooperative as the season goes along.
Right.
A little bit cooler. So that'll help as well. I think that, again, some teams just play shootouts. That's just what they do. I haven't seen Columbian to really say one way or the other. You look at the scores, you see what they do. You look at the off, and certainly you can see the kind of numbers that the offense has put up. But you get into these games, and usually, no matter who you are, at some point, you need to rely on your defense to make some key stops and to win you some games. It will be needed at some point when you especially when you get into the postseason, which we both know Columbian is heading there. So there's a lot that goes into this stuff. But I think that mainly when you have a quick strike offense in high school football and you play teams that are close to your ability level, you will play a lot of shootouts.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And this is a team that they've always historically, just since I've been covering them, they've always kind of had a problem shoring up against the run. This year, they're statistically the worst in the SBC Lake at stopping the run. They've almost given up 1,000 yards through 6 games on the ground and 16 touchdowns so far on the year. And in the passing game, they've been a lot more efficient. They have only allowed 688 yards and 5 touchdowns. They've taken away the ball 8 times. So it's something that they pride themselves on their passing game on offense, and the passing defense has been there and shored up and done a good job. But realistically, when it gets this time of year, what teams are trying to do. They're trying to run the ball.
Yeah.
And if this team can't find a way to shore up that run defense, it's going to be tough to stop some teams in the postseason. Because if they can run on you and they can run that clock out, if they get, think about this. This is how that Bishop Watterson game started out. They ran the clock meticulously on that first drive and got into the end zone. Then Columbian goes 3 and out, gives the ball right back to Bishop Watterson, and they meticulously drive down the field once again and pick up key third downs, and they punch it in. Then they're up 14-0 on Columbian. Now all of a sudden, Columbian's pressing. They've only had the ball one time, and they're down 14-0. And
well, look at remember the Browns game last week? Where
exactly.
They had one play, and then it's like, and suddenly you're down 7-0 before you even sit down.
Yes.
And but I will say this: it's come a long way, hasn't it? I mean, 10 years ago, Tiff and Columbians, Jack Jacoby, and we were at Sandusky, a big time game. I think it was a playoff game, and Jack ran the ball 9 or 10 straight times in a clock that took 7 or 8 minutes off the clock. This is back when Kodge was still the coach. Things have changed.
Yes.
It's much more wide open. With the spread offense, you get a lot of guys, a lot of quarterbacks who will run the football. But one of the reasons that Tiffin is so good, Columbian is so good, is the passing game. You spread a lot of defenses are better prepared for the run than they are for the pass, and you spread that defense out, you get a lot of openings. That's what I saw last week with the game that I was at. Macomb was killing everybody until they faced Pandora Gilboa, who had a wide open offense. Suddenly, that you spread them out, defense isn't as effective.
Yeah, and one thing that I think Columbian really needs to try to find a way to shore up is the first quarter. They have been outscored 65-27 in the first quarter so far this year through 6 games. They got to get out to a hot start. And I think a lot of it is, and I've only watched the games that we've been there for. I didn't watch the River Valley game because we weren't there. We weren't. Which one were we not at, Greg? Was that the River Valley one? No, we were there for that one.
No, we weren't there for that.
We weren't? Either way, I've watched Columbian all year.
Yeah, we weren't there for that.
And the one thing I will say about this team is, they start out and they're having to come from behind, but you don't see a lot of the run game in the first quarter. They don't really kind of lean on that till the second quarter. They try to get that passing game to set up the run. And that's been a common theme with this offense through the years. But one thing that I think would kind of benefit them a little bit more on the defensive side of the ball is to just get that running game going. You've got an all-state running back in the backfield. Get him going early. Then that sets up the passing game and sets up the passing lanes for you to be successful. Now, that's just me being a football media guy trying to tell a coaching staff who has over 100 years experience. I'm not trying to tell you how to do your job because you guys know what you're doing. You got a 5-1 football team. You're doing a great job. But when you see some of these stats and the problems that they've had the last couple of years in the postseason, you don't want this to rear its ugly head when it gets too late to fix it. So you still got 4 weeks left of the regular season where you can kind of shore up some of these. I wouldn't say it's not even a weak link because you got a 5-1 football team. It's more of it's a problem spot. You've just got to fix it or find a way to make it less noticeable going into the postseason.
I think I've told coaches now that they can punch me if I ever say how important is it to get off to a fast start, because I think every coach is like, well, you always want a fast start.
Yes.
It's like no, what we really want to do is go 3 and out. You want to test so but it does change your game plan, and if you can score first, if you can score early, you're maybe but again. But
they've outscored their opponents in every other quarter.
If you are good at passing, if you are good at the air game, then generally coaches like to use it.
Yeah.
And that's every coach that I've ever met. If you're good at passing, you like to do that. There are some coaches who they just love the running game and they want to stick with it. And in high school, that can really be great. But the passing game is something that when you can spread the field and you see those openings. I think it's you see the open guys on film and you see what can be accomplished. It's very hard to get away from that. So I don't know if Columbian gets off to a good start, I don't know that they necessarily go away from the passing game because it's so much of who they are. They have a quarterback who can do that. So it's a lot of and let's face it, kids. There are a lot of coaches who told me I had to run the spread offense because that's the way to get kids out. Kids like to play in wide open offenses.
They do.
And I think that's part of it as well.
Oh, absolutely. And, I mentioned Damian Brockington on the season.
How many Brockingtons are there?
There might be another one.
There was a Brockington when I was. Donnell was there.
Donnell, Devontae.
Yeah. Donnell was there when I was there.
Yep.
When I was still there.
And
they're all good.
Yeah. Oh,
they're all good.
Very talented family for sure.
Yeah.
But Damian, last night, I think he went over 1,000 yards on the season.
In
He had
week
966
6.
going
In
into
week
last night's
6,
game.
That's crazy.
So, yeah.
That's crazy.
He's averaging about 160 yards per game. Feed him. Feed him the ball. Get him the ball. I know Braden is one heck of an athlete. He's just absolutely torching defenses. So you got a lot of guys to feed. There's a lot of guys that you got to keep happy on that offense.
I was covering them when I was covering them during Judd's first 2 years. When they went 2-18 in 2 years,
because they were mirrored the Browns' success during that time.
This is a good problem to have.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
I'm not. I mean, I'd be envious if I was a head coach.
Kids, and those kids played as hard as they could. They did the best they could. They were competitive a lot of weeks. They very rarely got blown out during that stretch. But it was just, they played hard. But I'm sure that Judd looks at this and goes, "Oh my gosh, all these choices." It's like when you go through 2-18 and you have these options, it's been a number of years since then, and he's had a ton of success since then. But it's still got to be like walking into a candy store. Ooh, I want some milk duds, and let's get some malted milk ball, all that. Oh, let's do it. Ice cream. Let's do
everything.
The whole thing. Yeah.
All right, so
and Columbian has that. They have that. They can hit you so many different ways.
They've got Clyde at 4:30 at Frost County Stadium this Friday. We'll be there for that one. You can find that on the Adrenaline stream this week. We'll have Columbian first at 4:30. We'll have Calvert following. It says 8 o'clock, but I doubt that's going to be an accurate time. It'll be sometime around 8 o'clock that they get started.
I
with
feel
that
sorry
Calvert
for
game.
Matt and I.
Yeah,
an 8 o'clock start on a Friday night.
Well, I mean, you don't feel sorry for us? We're going to be there all day? Jeez. No, I'm just playing.
Okay, I've got a word for it. Do you guys have a deadline?
Yeah, it's when the fans expect the link. Where's the link? Where is the link?
I think about Friday nights. I've been, and Greg knows. Greg was there during my Jack Bauer days. Who are you coaching for?
I just think, with that long of a day, it's just going to be a fun day for football.
Oh yeah.
I feel like it's something that I don't think they're going to keep doing, but if it goes well, who knows? I mean, it's going to be definitely a great day for Tiffin. Come out and support the team that you root for, but if you can't make it, tune in right here on the broadcast on Heart of Ohio Sports. I'm sure some of you guys might not be able to get out of work right at 4 o'clock or 4:30 to make that 4:30 kickoff, so you can always pull us up on your phone. I'm sure your boss would love to give you that last half hour so you can just stare at your phone.
Boss will probably be at the game.
Yeah, most likely.
He's the boss. He or she is going to be at the game.
So Clyde versus Columbian first. Calvert versus Margaretta next. Hopewell Loudon picked up a big win over Margaretta last night, 26-14.
They are this is a juggernaut right now.
That's a juggernaut. They are rolling.
Codge has had so many good teams over the years, especially at Hopewell Loudon, and this one, it's too early to say how they stack up, but I thought their team 2 years ago was one of the best teams that they had.
Yeah.
Even against the ones that went to state, and this one, it might be even better than 2 years ago, and so we'll see how they stack up when they get there. But the one I thought the most interesting thing about last night was Codge has always been like this, very, very honest, and he says it was good that we had to struggle a little bit because they hadn't had to struggle in a long time. And
Gibsonburg is the closest game they had coming into that.
In football, you don't want it to be too easy.
No.
You can't. You've got to get through some adversity, and sounds like they did. They got off to now you talk about a fast start. 26-0 on Margaretta. The coach for Margaretta said, I don't even think we got off the bus. They eventually regrouped. They scored a couple touchdowns, but it was good for them to go through that.
Yeah, and absolutely, you're right. That's something that I feel like with this Columbian team, the adversity that they've had to go through in these first 6 weeks is going to really prepare them well for this next stretch run that they're going to go on. But this Hopewell Loudon team, they got a Willard team coming, or they got to go to Willard this week. Then they host St. Joe. And then they go to Woodmore before a Week 10 SBC River, potentially a River Championship matchup between themselves and Calvert.
You just have to. You're getting to the point where in the schedule where you just think that Calvert and Hopewell are going to be undefeated going into that game.
I think we all have that assumption that's going to be the case.
That's not, look, Willard's had some good moments this season. St. Joe's going through a really tough time, but. They're probably not going to they're not going to present the challenge that exists. I mean, I think you can look ahead and say that is, you look at Colonel Crawford and Cary, which we talked about earlier. this is kind of like what that's going to be.
Yeah,
Except
sure.
with the stakes even higher because it's very possible both teams will be undefeated, period.
It is possible, but Calvert has to take care of business against Margaretta and Willard, both teams sitting at 500 or above.
Yeah.
Margaretta's going to bring their A game. That's homecoming night for Calvert, but that's going to be a tough matchup for them to win against Margaretta. And then they host Willard 2 weeks from then.
So it's homecoming night and an 8 o'clock start.
Yeah,
So they gotta have homecoming festivities before that game too.
yeah. Yeah. That's why they say 8 o'clock start, that it's probably going to be closer to like 8:30 when they start that game. Because I have never seen a high school football game that is only 3.5 hours long exactly, and everybody's gone after 3.5 hours. And that's the time frame they're given that Columbia and Clyde game is 3.5 hours before the 8 o'clock start for Calvert. I don't know how that's going to happen.
And you don't assume that you're going to have like a running clock or anything like that in the Columbia and Clyde game.
No.
You figure that that's going to be a pretty tight game.
That's not going to happen. One other thing before we go, I do want to kind of touch on the Perkins team right now. That's the other team in this area that I feel like is kind of the juggernaut. You talk about Hopewell Loudon, Calvert, both undefeated teams.
Earlier too.
But yeah, we did talk about the Santoros a little bit. So let's talk about this Perkins team. They absolutely dominated Clyde last night. 31-7 was the final. And this is a team that really, they have not played a close game all year. That was the closest game they've played, and they won by 24. They destroyed Bellevue the week before, 49-0. They hung 59 on a good Rocky River team, who that's their only loss on the season. And then they beat up on Elyria Catholic and Woodward, who, I mean, they had a rough start to the year anyway. But
Elyria Catholic was having a down year. They lost a lot of their top players.
Yeah. So, but this is a stretch run for Perkins. They have a 6-0 Edison team that they're hosting. Then they have Norwalk that they're hosting, and then they have 2 tough road games. They have the crosstown rival Sandusky Blue Streaks in Week 9, and then they have to come to Frost County Stadium for Week 10 against Tiffin Columbian. Now, this is where they're finally going to be tested, but you would say Bellevue and Clyde are pretty good tests for Perkins as well, and they passed those with flying colors. So how do you feel about this Perkins team?
Well, I mean, I think that if you do to Clyde, if you are beating up teams like Clyde and Bellevue, and these are 2 of the best programs, historically in the SBC Lake, and I think when you do that and you're doing it, you kind of just stand back and go, what's going on? Because those teams don't get run out. Ed Nasanti probably, and Ed Nasanti's team, Bellevue had a rough game last night too. That's just very rare.
Yeah.
They have been a top program for decades, and the same thing for Clyde. I mean, it wasn't that long ago. Clyde was playing for a state, won a state championship, so it's there. What you can say for Perkins is that it's just been such a turnaround for them since Jalen Santoro came over.
Yeah,
and he seems to have. I mean, he was the best football. He was one of the best football players in the area when they made their run at the state final game. And and his father, of course, was a big time coach, successful coach for Bellevue girls basketball.
Oh yeah,
maybe it's in the genes. I don't know.
Yeah,
but when that program has had a totally different look to it ever since Jalen took over.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. It starts from the foundation up. They have built the youth program over there from the start. That's been their goal since he started over there, is they have to build from the bottom up, and that youth program is one of the best in the area. Now, I'll go through the numbers real quick for this Perkins team because it's very impressive. When you delve into the numbers, they've got 1 turnover on the season. That's through. Well, these are stats before last night's game.
I saw 5 turnovers last night.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But you've got you only have 1 turnover. You've taken the ball away 6 times, and this is the most telling stat for me. Opponents have only rushed the ball 74 times against Perkins all year for a total of 127 yards.
Well, and the fact, if you're only running it 74 times,
every other
in 6
team
games,
has had at least 160 rushing attempts on them.
What it tells you is they're getting ahead so fast that you can't afford to run the ball.
Yes, and even through the passing game,
opponents, not that it's mattered.
Yeah, opponents they've only got 662 yards passing, 2 touchdowns and 5 interceptions on the year. So
You think about Jalen Santoro. You know who his coaches were? His coaches were Ed Nasanti, one of the great coaches in Northwest Ohio, and then his coach was Gary Goff at Tiffin University, who's now the head coach at McNeese State. You look at and how he turned Tiffin University around,
and then
Valdosta. And of course his dad, of course, was a great coach as well. That's his pedigree.
Yeah,
that's his background. I mean, Jalen has learned from some of the absolute best in the industry.
Yeah, and he's putting it on display. And Perkins they're the team to beat, man. It's really how it is in the SBC Lake this year. Everybody kind of has their sights set on Perkins, and
you look at it too. The coaches in this conference and the heritage that they have. Judd learning from Steve Gilbert, Judd learning from Larry Karras, Hall of Fame, both Hall of Famers. I mean, these
Ed
are
Nasanti
with all the success that he's had.
Ryan Carter over in Clyde.
Ryan Carter played Division I college football. Played at I believe Ball State, I believe, and so yeah. I mean, these were guys who learned from the best.
Yeah.
And they have it's a new generation in a lot of ways. I mean, Nasanti is still there, but guys like Ryan Carter, guys like Judd Lutz, and then of course Santoro. I mean, this is the new generation of coaches, and they learned from the past generation, guys that are in the Hall of Fame. And it shows you the strength of the coaching in this area.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Zach, I think that's pretty much it. We've broken down a lot today. This was the first Saturday Scoreboard, so we got a little winded at times trying to talk about everything, I think. But, this has been a great show, and I'm looking forward to doing this again next week. We'll be back with another Saturday Scoreboard. I don't know if Zach's going to join me or not. It's up to him, but we always have an open seat for Mr. Baker because he's one of my favorite interview guests. Also, big shout out and a thank you to the wizard Greg Kinn for coming in here on a Saturday morning, getting us all set up and making us look good. Because, folks, without him, this doesn't happen. So if you see him out and about, just tell him you're thankful for everything he does for us. Once again, you've been watching the Saturday Scoreboard right here on Heart of Ohio Sports. Make sure you share the video, like, follow, subscribe on all of our platforms, especially YouTube. But please share the video. Help us reach a new audience. This has been Heart of Ohio Sports. Have a great day, everybody.